This was domination in every way possible. All right, it's the Breer Report for September the 20th. Week 3 is underway. Thursday Night Football is where we'll find our first topic, and this one was not as close as the final score would indicate, and the Jets won by 3 touchdowns. Should tell you how the night went for the Jets, how the night went for the Patriots, and for our first topic, we're going to dive into where the Jets are. They had a challenging stretch to open the season, an unprecedentedly challenging stretch to open the season with a West Coast Monday night game followed by a road game that was still a time zone away in Tennessee, and then coming back to open their home schedule on Thursday night against the Patriots. They come out of that now at 2-1, which I think Robert Saleh and his staff and Aaron Rodgers in that locker room would consider a win. When looking back at what they were faced with, and really they'd been building to the way that they play on Thursday night. I think they had an idea that the matchup with the Niners would be a tough one, both because of how well Kyle Shanahan knows Robert Saleh's defense. They, of course, were together in San Francisco, and because Aaron Rodgers and that offense are still getting up to speed. This is something Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers went through 5 years ago in Green Bay. There were some bumps early on in Green Bay with the Packers. There have been some early bumps in New York with the Jets. So working that stuff out, getting past the Niners matchup, they are able to win in a rock fight on Sunday in Tennessee and then really hit the accelerator on Thursday night against the Patriots. And this was domination in every way possible. You have to be encouraged by the way the defensive line played in their first game without Jermaine Johnson, who tore his Achilles against the Titans, and how Will McDonald stepped up again. 3 sacks on Sunday against the Titans, 2.5 sacks on Thursday night against the Patriots. It looks like he's ready to be that number one type of pass rusher. When they drafted him, they saw some Von Miller traits. Not saying he's Von Miller, but saw some Von Miller traits in who he is as a player. So the production they got out of that defensive line group was a positive. The production they got out of the offensive line, a positive again. Aaron Rodgers was well protected. They ran the ball well behind Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. And then maybe the most encouraging thing is how the passing game's coming along. On Sunday in Tennessee, there were 3 plays in particular that really stuck out to the Jets coaches as far as the progress they were making in the communication between Aaron and his skill players. One was the long touchdown throw down the sideline to Breece Hall. And then 2 came on the final drive, the game-winning drive, to beat the Titans. The first was a 3rd-and-1 conversion to Garrett Wilson. The second was a 2nd-and-16 conversion to Mike Williams. On both those throws, Aaron Rodgers showed some chemistry with a player that he's still getting to know. And so they took that right over into the game on Thursday. And Aaron Rodgers looked like the Aaron Rodgers who won MVPs in 2020 and 2021 as a Green Bay Packer. And it really looks like the ceiling is high in this team. Now, they're still going to have to manage the loss of Jermaine Johnson. What happens with Hassan Reddick, that's still unpredictable. There's the question of what happens now with Morgan Moses. The team doesn't think it's a season-ending injury. But this is what happens when you have 33-year-old tackles. Sometimes you're going to be dealing with injuries, which, put the 11th overall pick, Olu Fashanu, in. But overall, again, after 3 weeks to come out of that stretch with 2 wins and really look like an ascending team, like you got better week over week, it's a good spot for the Jets to be in. And they very much look like they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the AFC. All right, topic number 2. Speaking of ascending teams, the Saints certainly look like one right now, even with some of the age on their roster. 91 points through 2 weeks. That is the 4th highest total through 2 weeks in NFL history. And they've got a big game this weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, of course, coming off of a loss on Monday night to the Falcons. Interesting spot for both teams. The Dome should be rocking for this one. And it's going to be interesting seeing the Saints offense going up against Vic Fangio and that Philly defense that is licking its wounds a little bit coming out of the loss at home to the Falcons and giving up that game-winning drive at the very end. And, I think the challenge the Saints provide for anyone now is how they've really leveraged their speed. And that really tells the story of where they are offensively. This offseason, Dennis Allen sought to simplify what the Saints were doing on offense. And this really relates to having a system in place for 20 years that really worked for them. Between Sean Payton and Drew Brees, over a decade and a half, the Saints were adding and adding and adding without subtracting anything from the offense. So the offense only got more and more and more complicated, which benefited Payton and Brees. And then that carried over to Pete Carmichael becoming the offensive coordinator when Sean Payton left after the 2021 season. So where did that leave the Saints the last couple of years when Payton was gone and when Brees was gone? It left them in a spot where the point of entry for young players was tough, where older players weren't playing as fast. And so what Dennis Allen wanted to do this offseason was untangle the offense. So how do you do that? Well, one way you can do it is go and buy into what's become the most popular offensive scheme in pro football, and that's the McVay Shanahan scheme, and go and get one of the assistant coaches who can run that scheme, because that scheme really is built on what they call the illusion of complexity, where they formation and emotion, and they make five different things look like the same thing, which allows for players to play fast, but also presents a lot for a defense to deal with. And in plugging that in, they've been able to get a faster game from their quarterback. I talked to Derek Carr about it a few days ago. He said to me, I'm not a 4-2 guy, but we got a few of those. It's got me playing fast, and it's got those guys playing even faster, both mentally and physically. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave. There's a lot of speed and there's a lot of talent in that offense. And now they've been sort of able to unlock all of that speed by simplifying the offense and by getting guys out there not thinking, but just playing fast. And so it's going to be interesting now to see what happens with an Eagles defense that isn't based on attacking, but is based on disguising things to the opponent. So how will the newfangled Saints offense match up against that Eagles defense? It's going to be really interesting to see how that matchup plays out and whether or not the Saints can keep up the breakneck pace that they've set over the first 2 weeks. Again, over 45 points per game. Finally, topic number 3. The Bengals come out of a absolute dogfight in Kansas City at Arrowhead, losing by a point at 0-2. They're now 1-11 in the first 2 weeks of the season, over 6 years under Zach Taylor. And I'm here to tell you, there's not only no reason to panic, I think the Bengals are in a really good spot coming out of the first 2 weeks. The loss to New England was obviously an anomaly. The loss in week 2, I think, is just a matter of two teams that are both going to be there in the end, taking their swings at each other. Either team could have won that game. Obviously, it doesn't go the Bengals' way. Some bad breaks down the stretch make the difference between winning and losing there. But this Bengals team is going to continue to get better. Ja'Marr Chase is going to get his feet underneath him. T. Higgins returned to practice this week. He's got the hamstring injury. I'm not sure if he'll play on Monday against the Commanders, but they were encouraged with how he looked at practice on Thursday. Looks like he's going to have a chance at least to play on Sunday. So now you got Higgins back to take the attention off of Chase. Joe Burrow's got a couple games under his belt, looked better in week 2 than he did in week 1. You're starting to see the run game going with Zach Moss and Chase Brown. Outside of the top 2 receivers, guys like Andre Savis and Charlie Jones and Jermaine Burton have started to make plays. So it looks like you've built some depth in Higgins' absence. On the offensive line, eventually you're going to get Amarius Mims back. And then defensively, the defensive line played a lot better in week 2 than week 1, and that's always been the hallmark, the bedrock of Lou Anarumo's defenses is the group that he's got up front with Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. And remember, Hendrickson missed a lot of practice time over the summer as well. So I think this is going to be an interesting week for the Bengals. It should be a get-right week where they play the Commanders on Monday night. They have the extra day to prepare. The Bengals are a team I'm watching coming out of week 2. It's because of the improved health. It's because I think they're going to continue ascending when they get Higgins back, when they get Mims back to play right tackle. And, it looks like Joe Burrow is going to move forward after, again, an up and down first couple of weeks and play at the MVP level we've been accustomed to seeing him play at.